I would like to call the June 9th meeting of the Concord Planning Board to order. This is a video meeting, and so as a result, it has somewhat different procedures than our face-to-face meetings. So members of the public will be not having their video on and will be muted while we are deliberating. We will have a public comment section at the end where you can be recognized. And then we have just one scheduled item for a business this evening, but we have several other items that we will take care of for administrative business. So I will now have our 7 o'clock item begin, and that's the recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the application of Now Communities LLC for a special permit under sections 10 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for a 14-unit planned residential development at 1651, 1657, and 165X Main Street. So who is representing the applicant this evening? I think I see Dan there. Yeah.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Matt, Mr. Chair. Last time around, you guys heard a fair amount from me. And tonight I thought I would turn it over because of the nature of the questions to my team. And with me tonight is Danny Carr from Stamsky and McNary, as well as I saw Jeremy there for a second. He's here, and Jared Joyce will be joining us. He's a landscape designer, and so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Danny.
Hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Dan Carr from Stamsky McNary. I think it would be a good idea to go over the revision letter that was submitted to the town a couple weeks ago, just to go over exactly what changed from the last time we were before you. So at the request of some of the abutters at Riverwalk, the common entrance to the two developments has been proposed to be shifted approximately 15 feet to the west. Some of the unit owners in the lower court of the Riverwalk were worried about headlights coming into their house as people enter the development. So the road was shifted to the west so that it straddles the property line between Riverwalk and Waterside. And so,
Danny?
Yeah.
So you can have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, I'll do that.
If you want to bring up the plan.
I think you have to make me co-host or something.
No, I don't. So you should be able to share your screen now.
Oh, there we go.
Awesome.
Great. So this is the new entrance to the two developments. So previously, or the existing entrance comes in like this. And so unit 4 here was worried about headlights entering their dwelling as people entered the two developments. So this road was shifted west 15 feet approximately. And so it'll have the same function as it was previously. It's just shifted a little bit. And so there'll be some pavement removal on the Riverwalk property. And this right here is the existing driveway to some of the upper court units for Riverwalk. And so we kept the same slope there so that they can still access that existing garage there. And so we shifted that drive down, and we provided the fire department with the Concord fire truck. Has the ability to pull in here and then pull into either development and then reverse into the other development and back in, exit the development, as opposed to having to reverse as they currently do for Riverwalk. So that was a change at the request of the abutters. And another change at the request of the abutters was no parking along that entrance drive. So we removed the parking spaces that were previously up here, and now we placed a few more down here within Waterside.
Danny, can I interrupt one more time?
Sure.
If Matt could quickly, as Nancy reminded me, take a roll call vote.
Oh, sorry, a roll call for attendance. Sorry, yes.
And I'm also going to have Burton, once he does his roll call, he will recuse himself.
Yes. Okay, sorry about those two procedural issues. So I'd like to take a roll call of attendance for our planning board members. So I'll just do it in the order that I see on the Zoom. Ms. Overdahl, could you indicate, unmute yourself, indicate your presence?
Sorry, here, present.
Thanks. Mr. Flint?
Here, and I'm recusing myself from the first matter.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Saya?
Present.
Ms. Ferguson?
Here.
Mr. Baudet?
Present.
And Ms. McEnany?
Present.
Thank you. Okay, now we
Thank
can
you.
resume. Thank
All
you
right.
for the
No
catch.
Of course. There are no longer parking spaces proposed along the access drive. Instead, we've added a few more spots within Waterside.
Yes, so may I just ask why, I mean, you know, especially now that the drive is pushed over and that the parking spots are on the new development side, I mean, why can't there be parking spots there? Or what is the objection, I guess?
Well, if I remember correctly, the Riverwalk residents were worried about queuing when exiting the development and people parking there.
If I
Yeah, if you want to.
If I can just add to that, the other concern that that was mentioned to us is the conflicts of the people pulling out of those 4 spaces up by the duplex and the live above, and the traffic coming in, exactly, and traffic coming in and out. They felt that it would they'd prefer not to have that as a concern. There's enough things going on in the turning movements that they would prefer to not have that parking.
Yeah, I guess the reason I bring it up is that it also, I read that the plan shows these 4 spots on Main Street, which will not be allowed. So I guess it comes back to, okay, where are you at on parking?
So if not counting the spots on Main Street, we currently have 2 spots for every dwelling except for 1 spot in the 1-bedroom flats. And then, so each spot will have 2, or each unit will have 2 spaces except for the 1-bedroom flats, which will have 1 space. And then there will be 2 visitor parking spaces on top of that. So you can see that the circles here represent the units. So which units get which parking spots.
Yeah, and so I guess for this kind of a concept of community, that would be plenty of parking, we'd hope.
Should be. That's
Okay.
been the experience at Riverwalk.
Thanks.
And Mr. Chair, I don't want to confuse matters, but we are hoping that we can revisit that afterwards, the 4 parking spaces on Main Street with the various departments, the DPW and possibly others, because we do believe it's a good thing, both in terms of traffic calming, parking count, and access to the Riverwalk trail system. But it's not, we're accepting the comment as it is, and I just want to mention that we hope to continue to pursue that.
Okay.
Yes. So I guess I'll go now through the comments received from the various boards and how we've responded to those. From the fire department, we have settled on a name of Waterside Commons for the proposed development. The applicant will be working closely with the fire department on a new, more legible development directory sign. There were concerns about how legible the existing sign is there. So we're proposing a new sign, and we'll work closely with the fire department so that everyone is satisfied. And so there'll be a new sign here at the entrance to the development kind of giving an overview, you know, to the left is Riverwalk, to the right is Waterside, and there'll probably be a map on there that shows the units. And it'll have to be larger so that it can be more legible and read by people driving on Main Street. And then in addition to that sign, there's also a Waterside Way sign proposed where the road branches off into Waterside Commons. Let's see. And so the applicant is open to having the Waterside Commons units to have Waterside Way addresses. There was concern about if all these units were to have Main Street addresses, it gets confusing because, you know, it's not actually directly on Main Street. It's a little bit off Main Street. So we're open to having Waterside Way addresses on the private way. Previously we had shown an emergency access connection off the end here to the Westvale Meadow development. After receiving comments from the engineering department about the slope of that road, and after discussing it with Westvale Meadows, we are no longer proposing that connection. And instead of having that connection, all proposed units will have fire sprinklers, approved fire sprinkler systems in all newly constructed buildings. The change in grade between this parking area and the existing parking area here was just too large to get anything less than a 12% slope, which the engineering department was not a fan of. So we decided to go the route of the fire sprinklers. And we also showed the ability of that fire truck to turn around within the development based on this new T road. I think that's all from the fire department. From the engineering department, just some notes were added to the plan about the existing septic system. What else? Oh, so this new access road will have a 3-foot grass shoulder and then a 5-foot sidewalk. So this 5-foot sidewalk will provide the access from Main Street to the common open space. And so we can look at the new easement required. So there'll be an easement on Riverwalk property and on Waterside property for either development to enter the new common access road. And so there'll be an access and utility easement on both properties, and then a revised open space access easement. This kind of lighter 2-dash line here is the existing open space access easement. And so we're proposing this new easement on Waterside Way property, on Waterside Commons property, sorry. And then it'll connect back into that existing trail easement here. And then that trail easement will go along the property line on Riverwalk. And then also we show an easement, an additional very tiny easement here, which will allow people to access to the open space on Waterside Way. And so this line here is the edge of the open space. And so this, you know, provides a loop of access to the two open spaces. And the applicant and I both discussed this with Delia at the Natural Resources Commission. And there's some promise with potentially in the future being able to link a bunch of trails along the Assabet River. Apparently there is a very informal trail on Westvale Meadows, and there is additional trails. Of course, there's the trail on Riverwalk, but then there's also trails a little bit further east on the Assabet River that there's hope that there could be eventual connection between all those trails. It'll be a really nice.
Yeah, I mean, so far the Westvale Meadows folks, there's no easement along the river, you know, beyond where this little island is towards the front. And they have resisted the idea of extending access out, but let's hope maybe we
Yeah.
can get that to move in the future. And then I do also believe that to the east, there are a couple of property owners that I think that have not been on board with the idea of extension. But, you know, time goes on, we'll see.
Yeah, but
The other thing is the easement off of Main Street itself on the west, on the water side side of things, is that strictly required, or, you know, it doesn't seem to add much. You know, I mean, the existing easement is quite clear, that's on the Riverwalk side. I just, you know, I see this sidewalk and then it crosses a driveway, right, to get down here. I mean, it just doesn't seem like a very attractive addition or necessary addition, let's say, to the trail easements, unless there is some requirement that the new development provide access to the public off of the public way, or I don't know if there's some specific reason that this has to be done.
We did discuss that with Delia, and my takeaway from it, and Danny can correct me, was that she kind of liked the idea of it being that from Main Street down to where the trails begin, that it would be a little more formalized and be on a sidewalk that potentially somebody could navigate a little better than walking down the edge of the road. And
Okay.
so she seemed to respond to that. And as I said,
It's interesting because I've always felt like at Riverwalk that you can just see straight down from the street. It just goes, you know, straight down towards, you know.
yeah.
That would
So.
still be available, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, so
And there's nothing else additional you were going to put in the sidewalk anyway, or are you just putting in the sidewalk for the easement?
We were going to do the sidewalk anyways. It was a little bit different designs. We made it more coordinated with the parking up there. We felt that it was just, so we tried to organize, and Jeremy maybe can speak to that a little bit later on, but it was just trying to make it a little bit more designed and planned. We also thought it may, you know, maybe all of us have at one point or another have been over there to visit, and we thought it might be nice to sort of formalize where visitors, non-residents, how they would access the trails back there, as opposed to just sort of wandering down and discovering it as they went. Right now, it's a little bit vague. Except I agree with you guys that once you get in beyond where the houses start in the lower court, it's very clear.
yeah, so when we shift the driveway to the west, so this is the existing trail easement now, and so it kind of it would be off the pavement, and there'd probably be some landscaping in that area. So I think that's why we had to shift it and provide it formally along. This hatched area is pavement that's proposed to be removed, and so there wouldn't be much. I think it would be nice to formalize it along the sidewalk there.
Okay. Yeah.
And Matt, also to your point about crossing the road, the plan is to do the same kind of treatment that we did next door, which is to change the paving pattern so that it's both clear where you're supposed to walk, but perhaps more importantly, it sends a visual and an auditory signal to anybody driving down there that, oh, I should pay attention.
Yeah.
I'm actually crossing a crosswalk.
Yep. So I'm just going through our response to the engineering department. They talked about access to the basin. So there's an infiltration basin proposed behind the development, and this 6-foot grass paver and the 4-foot paved path should provide enough space for like a pickup truck to get all the way down to the infiltration basin and be able to clean out that basin of any sediment that eventually builds over time. We provided some lighting along the paths and near the parking areas, and we did provide some cut sheets for those. I can show those as well. Let me see. This is what it looks like.
That's on the house itself, and there should be another one that shows you what the ground mounted. Another one, that's another house.
This one, all in the house.
Hmm.
Oh, I think I have it here.
I think it's a different, these are all the house mounted ones.
I think I combined.
Should be one that ground mounted. Or might be part of this package though.
This one right here, right?
There you go.
So it's very, very small. That'll be nice along the pathway, along the lower court, and some on the upper court as well.
Okay.
And one of the engineering comments was another soil test for the lower infiltration basin. We had done some previous testing showing nice sand, and they wanted another test pit. So we've scheduled that for next week with someone to witness that testing. We've updated the infiltration basin detail now that we've show it slightly differently. We've set the emergency spillway of the basin set at the 100-year storm, so there'll be no overflow from that unless there's a larger than 100-year storm event. What else? Some notes on the infiltration basin, like what type of material is allowed on the bottom of the basins. And we've also submitted sewage disposal plans to the health department, but they have not had a chance to formally provide a response to that. But we've provided all the details for the septic system. And we show snow storage areas on so there are snow storage areas there, here, here, and here, and here. And there was a comment from the engineering department about we had showed the snow storage area next to the hydrant. So we've cut that off and brought it down so that the hydrant will always have to clean out the hydrant of snow. So it's always accessible. And let's see. So we showed a little bit more detail on the sewer system. So as you may know, this development is set at a much lower elevation than Main Street. And so the portion of units that are to be on town sewer are going to require pumps. So we show these grinder pumps for the units that are going to be on town sewer. And so this is the lowest unit that's on town sewer, and that's connected to a sewer line that's going to pump it all the way up to Main Street and into the existing sewer manhole on Main Street. You can see some of the grinder pumps here for every unit will require a grinder pump that's on town sewer. And the remainder lower units flow by gravity into a sewer manhole system, and then a septic tank and a pump chamber. And that pumps the wastewater up into a subsurface sewage disposal system. We're proposing a Presby system, which provides some treatment prior to infiltrating into the ground. And so this is the footprint of that leach field and the distribution box here. We, at the request of CMLP, we show the existing communications and electric wires on Riverwalk. So you can see that highlighted here. There was also another comment about how our water line is going to be set. Previously, we had shown it connecting to the existing water on Riverwalk and then looping back into the Riverwalk development. So we're still going to loop it back into the Riverwalk line at this point here between some of the units. but it's going to start from Main Street. So we're going to provide a more formal loop of water, which will be an improvement to the existing water services on Riverwalk. We also now show EV charger stations. So there will be 2 in each car pavilion, shown there, and then here and here. And then 1 in the attached garages on Unit 1 and Unit 8 here and here. And then also there is 1 proposed outside the car pavilions for the visitor parking spaces at this location here. And
So
so,
if there, this is Nathan, if
What was
they're
that?
only on each end of the pavilions, how, and those are unit specific, correct?
They're supposed to be positioned, and maybe, Danny, I'm looking at your plan, but they're supposed to be positioned so that each EV charger can handle 2 cars.
Yeah.
And going to be one of them is a 6 bay, I believe, is that right? And the other one is a 2 bay.
yep,
So we have 2 in this. We have 2 in called out for the 6 bay and 1 for the 2 bay. If I have that right, it might be 3 in the. The
But
idea
if there's, is how they're shown on there, the way they'll be put like on the far wall of each side?
no.
they'll probably be at the rear.
Yeah, they'll be at the rear. I can't point to the, yes,
along
exactly.
This,
Okay, that just, because otherwise it seemed like the only cars that would have access are for the 2 that are deeded.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, this is probably a bad location for it, but just graphically to show it, that there'll be
Okay.
2 each location. And so there was concern from the building department about the height of the proposed buildings. So we made a spreadsheet, and the architect did revise some of the roof heights so that we're all in compliance now with the building height requirements.
And then also there was a question from a neighbor about the orientation of the roofs. I didn't see any changes in this iteration.
we did actually make them. We have, we redesigned the type B units, and there are 2 of those. It's,
Okay, so from the site plan, I couldn't tell the roof lines. Okay.
yeah, if you look at the architecturals that were submitted in that, you'll see that there's now about 300 square feet plus or minus, or probably a little more on both units number 5 and 2. And then the same treatment can be applied, Jeremy confirmed, on unit number 1.
Mhm.
Even for the flats building, we made an adjustment so that the flats would also have some south-facing roof.
So you're saying like 5 out of the, 7 buildings would have it, or
No,
be
now,
oriented?
Mr. Chair, now all of the homes have.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
It was those, I think it was Jen Flint who.
It was these that were going the other direction that were the ones. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
south is to the right.
Okay. Got it. They're
Yeah.
more of a hip roof now. Is that the idea?
No, it's a gable coming into to a shed.
Hmm.
You can see it on the roof plan. It's.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't look at the new elevations. Okay.
Bring those up.
I can share those later too, Danny, if we want to go into detail.
I just had them up actually.
There you go.
This is a nice view of an overall view of the development there. You can see some
Actually, if you go to the view in the package, this one isn't updated. So one more, this one here. So you can begin to see like that lowest unit down to the bottom right.
Yeah.
The idea is
Yeah.
we just introduced a cross gable that gave us the ability to put the panels on that
Yeah.
sort of
Okay.
side. So, and even in the upper court, this rendering didn't get updated, but even we
same.
could do that same treatment to that unit there.
Mhm.
The flats at the top, we got rid of those gables and put, a pitched roof there. And even the one that's has that little gable dormer, we are going to change that dormer to be like the ones in the rest of the development here. So every structure has south facing roof that
All right.
gives us
Good
the potential
response.
for
Thanks.
solar. Yeah, no problem.
Yep, so there's that change so that we'll have more access for solar panels there. Um, there was a comment from the Natural Resources Division about the landscape plan. So this line here is the floodplain. Sorry. So there was some turf proposed within the floodplain, just a very small amount. And so we just decided to cut that turf in so that we're not proposing anything other than native plantings within any resource area. What else?
Actually, while we're there, I was interested because one of the big open items from our process was really the configuration of the common open space. And so I didn't know if this is the right moment or if you had a later point in your presentation you wanted to address that.
Sure. Let me bring up, we made a plan that shows Riverwalk's open space relative to Waterside's open space. So let me bring that plan up. So the green is the open space, and this is the property line between Waterside and Riverwalk. And so Riverwalk's open space is smaller, but it is obviously connected to Waterside's open space. And so we provide a strip of open space along the access to that Riverwalk open space and essentially Waterside's open space. So you can see it's quite a significant amount of open space, and you can see the existing trail on Waterside's land and the trail on Riverwalk's land as well. And so the reason Riverwalk's open space is smaller is that after Riverwalk was built and the floodplain was updated by FEMA so that the floodplain elevation was higher. And so there's now less upland than there was on their previous floodplain designation elevation. So that was why they're able to get away with less open space. And so right now we have the required open space at the configuration shown.
Yeah, I think, in our previous, we have two sets of things that we evaluate. One is, three sets of things. One's a total percentage of common open space offered. The second is the percentage of upland. And then the third is the configuration of the open space. And I mean, in a recent PRD application, we had extensive discussions, as I'm sure many of our fellow board members remember, about what really we could consider to meet the criteria that we have for the common open space. And I think one of the things that we were pretty clear on at that time was that narrow strips of land at the perimeter of the property wouldn't normally be considered a common open space. Now I should say in this plan that on the east side, that strip that goes up to the street, that makes sense to me as being considered common open space because it is in fact part of the whole entrance scheme for the public to get to the back, right, and for the people that are in their homes. But then the one on the west side, that little strip there, that's a little bit harder for me to kind of interpret as common open space. Yes, it's not space you're using, but it is, and it's going to be green space, but is it really commonly accessible? Is it serving any kind of purpose other than just that it's adding square footage that you can count towards common open space?
I might take a pass at trying to rationalize that, Mr. Chair. I think what we've done in that particular side that you're talking about, the west side, is we've employed a number of low impact development techniques. So it's allowed us essentially to create what I consider to be similar to Riverwalk landscape features, water features when it is raining, when it has rained. And there it's part of any design challenge. I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of these things. There's only
Oh,
so
yeah.
much area to do. But I do think that it's stepped up in that regard, that it's not just going to look like green or planted. It's going to be more than that. So, I mean, that's just how I'm sort of reacting. I don't know if that's useful to anybody, but.
I'm just trying to flip to the section that we have on, yeah, so 10.2.9.1. I mean, actually, the planner's report talks about the criteria, you know, and evaluates that criteria. And I guess, it's really the shape, dimension, character, and location suitable to assure its use as a park, recreation, conservation, or agricultural purposes by at least all the residents of the planned residential development. And in determining whether this intent's been satisfied, we'll consider the extent to which the land, you know, has one or more of the following characteristics. So is it on a river? You know, is it in agricultural use? Does it provide significant wildlife habitat? Does it provide recharge to current or future municipal wells or highly favored aquifer areas? Active recreation, trail networks, scenic views, or public access to town or state recreation and conservation land. Those are the criteria that we can cite. LID, though it's something that we definitely like in a PRD, is not one of those things.
Well, so maybe in my clumsy explanation of it, I wonder if, in my mind, it is going to be attractive, and therefore does it fall into the scenic, or scenic something very specific that everybody driving by Main Street theoretically would get to enjoy, or is it okay that people walking down here and the Westvale Meadow folks, our next door neighbor to the west, will get to enjoy this element?
Yeah. Well, I'll defer to my fellow board members, but I did feel like I needed to at least raise that, especially given recent conversations we've had on other
Matt?
PRD applications.
Is your concern that if you didn't count that strip on the west, that it wouldn't meet the?
They're very, very tight on their
Okay.
upland. Yeah, I mean, they've got to count every square inch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate that, but you know, we do get a lot of applications, and we have to, you know, provide consistent
Mm-hmm.
metrics.
Right, but I mean, you know, to that point, it doesn't appear obviously to be just counting bits here and there. You know, there is that nice contiguous section, although
Definitely, that's great. This
right,
land is,
so,
you know, a lot of wetland on this site.
right, and so I guess when I look at it different. I look at, you know, even though that might add enough to get them to the total amount that they need, I don't say, it doesn't appear that it's kind of piecemeal together to reach that, you know what I'm saying? So I look at that with less concern as you perhaps.
I'm curious about Mr. Bozdet's point of view on this one, since he was he had a strong point of view previously.
So I mean, I have that concern here as well. And I was looking at the layout, and I was trying to think if there's a way to configure the parking barns in such a way that you can kind of shift the homes. So if you could move the 4-space or 2-space parking barn over sort of to make an L where the other parking barn is, and kind of shift things around more to the east. I think that's right, to the east. Then you're kind of opening up that space to be more than just like a 5-foot strip, which is that about what that strip at its narrowest is there? Is that about 5 feet?
I think it's more, what is it, 10, 15? I bet.
It's more than that.
Yeah. I mean, you've got setbacks that you got to honor.
It's 12 feet.
You're on the wrong side.
on this side, I believe it's the
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah, they're both 12 feet at the lowest.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah, this is obviously a little bit different from, as they all are, from the other one that you're mentioning. But yeah, it's a similar issue.
Can I just comment, and I don't know, but this point is probably not lost on anybody looking at Danny's plan right now, but I think this plan is just worth maybe you can, Danny, if you could step out just a little bit. And yeah, you can see, I think you can tell that every square inch of this project has been designed in order to accommodate all the different systems. And I'm not pressing back on you at all. I thought this one, when I look at it, kind of says, wow, there's a lot of stuff happening in there. And that's really, at least in part, to try to preserve as much of that big chunk of open space land in the back, which obviously can't be built on anyways, and that's kind of the big idea.
And this might be a little bit of a stretch, but when after a rain event, I know as a child I used to watch the rain go down I lived in the city, so it was quite different, but after a rain event, it would be kind of interesting to see the water come from the road, go through the swale, and then it fills up a sediment forebay and then overflows into another swale, and then it goes into the next one. So I think children of the development would probably enjoy watching that happen.
Oh, so
Active recreation.
I'm because
We can move on.
Yeah. We do need to
different
address
enough.
this in our recommendation, right?
Yeah.
So it's just
This
saying.
is different enough in my mind. Also.
that's all I want to say.
All right.
Child.
All right. So as I said earlier, we did submit a sewage disposal plan, a fully designed sewage disposal plan to the health department. So we'll look forward to their comments if they have any on that design. What else? We did clarify that the bedrooms, the total bedrooms on Waterside Commons is 30 bedrooms. We're proposing 18 of those bedrooms to town sewer and 12 bedrooms to the on-site septic system. And that's shown on the plan on the master table here, the sewage flow down here. So 9 units on town sewer and 5 units on septic. Oh yes, and we also show a location for a centralized mailbox, just right next to Car Pavilion 1 here. In this general area would be where that mail station would be. And we show some a fence. So this area right here is the proposed common trash collection area. Currently, it's about right here for the for Riverwalk, and so obviously that's going to have to be shifted. So we show it in this area here, and we're showing a fence for screening around it, and there are some plantings proposed around it as well, and that'll be for both Riverwalk and Waterside Commons. And so, oh, there was a question about these guys here. Those are the roof dry wells. We try to fit as much roof dry wells as we could to lower or to decrease the size of the basin out back. So these are the roof dry wells. That's where those rectangles are. And so that summarizes the changes to the plan since we were before you before. If you have any questions, I can answer those. Otherwise, I think Jared wanted to talk about the landscape plan a little bit.
Quick question, actually. The grinder pumps, do they need the backup system? How do they work in a power failure?
The what?
Grinder.
The grinder pumps?
Yeah.
That is a good question.
My understanding is that they are not tied into a backup system, but have a capacity within them to handle the load. And for some period of time, and it's not hours, it's probably, depending upon how many people are in the house and what they're doing. It could be closer to days. The other thing that I would point out to you is that Main Street is one of the two primary trunks coming into the town. And the reason why I'm responding that way to your question, Alan, is that this came up when we were selling Riverwalk. Folks said, geez, I'm an all-electric house. I'm worried about that. And so I researched this, and I don't think there's an incident that I'm aware of in recent history where the power has gone down for more than hours as opposed to days. It supplies Emerson Hospital and a number of other primary functions in the town.
And it's good to mention that there is emergency storage within the grinder pumps themselves, so that it's not like as soon as the power goes off, you can't, use your water. But so there is some storage within that.
My other question is about the solar panels on the roof. Since this is being designed, the solar panels are being designed with the roofing. I was wondering if the dimensions, I know it might be a little complicated, but so that it doesn't, the roof can be designed in a way where I know this is a representation also, it's not the accurate dimensions, but so that it doesn't look like it's an add-on, but more integrated with the roof. So basically, looking at the dimension I suggest basically doing this, looking at the dimensions of the solar panel you're going to use, and maybe this is for the architect, to try to fit it as neatly as possible on the roof so that it doesn't look like an afterthought.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion. That's something we've been doing on more of our recent projects. You obviously have to know which panel, which manufacturer you're using, so you know the critical dimension. We're all hopeful the Tesla stuff takes off soon, where they're just shingles, so it's it makes these things easier. So we'll see what's available in a year when the time comes to do this. But I think that's a great suggestion to really try to make it as visually sympathetic as it possibly can be.
I really love the design. It's one of the best we've seen, I think, recently.
Thank you.
Generally speaking.
That's credit to Jeremy and the folks at Union Studios.
Okay, let's take a look at landscape plan.
All right, Jared, been very patient.
Oh yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for having me. I don't know if, Danny, if you want to leave the design up just for sort of a point of reference.
Sure.
So are you able to see me right now?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Jared Joyce. I'm the owner and operator of Good Roots Landscape and Design. I've been invited by Dan to the landscape design on this, and in particular the planting plan. I'm excited to be involved in the project, as I think there's a lot of potential to create an ecologically minded landscape that will preserve pollinator-friendly habitat and provide visual appeal to the residents and neighboring communities. My team at Good Roots has been managing the landscape at Concord Riverwalk for the last 8 years. We're proud to do so using a fully organic management plan. And I think that might help in the creation of shared space via walking trails between Riverwalk and the new property. I think we might be able to help make that process successful. A key component of this development project really is the management of the removal of selected trees, planting safeguards to protect the existing mature trees, and then replanting the newly developed property with thoughtful intention. This particular design, is a unique community development, which is very densely built by design, which offers a lot of benefits. This will require us to revegetate all the areas around the new residences, and the dense layout does hinder the planting of large trees within the interior of the property, but offers a lot of potential to cultivate rich pollinator-friendly gardens throughout the property. And the sunny interior of the development will help allow all the new residences to be solar friendly. Our goal is to sort of utilize the border areas of the property to add a robust planting of largely native trees, a mix of evergreen and deciduous for screening and aesthetic purposes. These trees will help to mitigate the impact of reducing the existing trees within the interior of the project. We would be seeking to preserve the native vegetation and the underplanting of the trees throughout the border of the property that will complement the surrounding vegetation, especially on the Riverwalk and the southern portion of the property. Our plan is to preserve 2 large mature specimen oaks along the border of Riverwalk, and 1 mature cherry tree along the border of Westvale Meadows, and a large cluster of various existing trees on the northwest corner of the property. And a tree preservation plan will be put into place to protect those trees during construction. As noted, sort of starting with the common area near Main Street and continuing down through the center of the project, a mixed pollinator-friendly garden will be created that pedestrians will experience and enjoy as they make their way through the property, starting from Main Street, and as you can see in the rendering, down through the center. These gardens are going to sort of culminate at the end where there's a community building and patio, and it doesn't show it in this rendering, but the idea is that behind that community building, there will be a drainage basin with a bridge going over it, and that bridge will bring the residents to the turf area. That turf area is being designed really specifically for the function of residents as a useful space that they can congregate, play sports, and really sort of beat up as necessary. And then as soon as you get to the floodplain, the turf area would be done. No turf would be on the southern portion of the floodplain. So it'd be a fairly small lawn area that would be managed organically. So this is just sort of a general overview of the landscape style and what we're trying to do. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, one question that did come up last time was just the tree removals that you're going to need to make to execute the project. I don't know if you have made your plan yet as required by the tree preservation bylaw, but identifying the trees to be removed and the DBH of those and all.
Yep, Danny, I don't know if that's something that you have handy, but they have done a thorough tree inventory, calculated all the DBH of all the trees to come out, and then we're using the border areas of the property where we can replant to mitigate as much of that as possible.
Okay, here we go. Thanks.
Yeah,
one nice sized maple there. Okay.
and Danny, do you have access to Jared's plan, his landscape rendered plan that he did?
Yes.
People may, I just thought maybe the members of the planning board might want to see it.
There we go. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Danny.
Well, these are the 2 oaks that are to be saved in orange.
Okay.
There. And this is the cherry that's to be
Yes, and I wanted to carry down and exactly. So those 2 oaks along the Riverwalk border, I mean, those are large, mature, specimen style oak trees. They're fortunately well situated in between Waterside and Riverwalk so that they could be outside of the construction zone, and we feel confident we could protect them during construction. Unfortunately, at some of the ones up closer to Main Street will need to be taken out, but we wanted to select ones that were mature to sort of leave some mature trees in there, and really trying to keep as many in as we could given the dense building that's going to be happening.
And you think you can protect that cherry with all the water control features you're adding?
Yes, the cherry is a little bit smaller than the oaks up by Riverwalk. The cherry is really like the base of it's right on the property line. It's going to be one that we have to carefully work around. But yeah, it does seem to be far enough away from that little swale that it shouldn't need to be regraded right there.
Okay. Any comments else from the board on the landscape plan? I guess the species that you're going to be planting, I guess I didn't really see an inventory there, but I know you must have it.
Yeah, we do have a list. I mean, I'm happy to sort of go through them.
If it's in our package, I guess, yeah. All right. Any other elements that we need to be presented now, I think, before we start our discussion?
I know we've touched on the architecture. If I could be very brief,
I'd like
I could
to
just
see
tap
the
quickly
latest
through the elevations.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful. And
Sure.
Danny, actually, you want to stop sharing your screen and I'll share mine?
Sure, yeah.
That way I can use
Especially since there have been some changes in roof lines.
Let's see here. So
those changes in roof line or shed design, that didn't really affect the square footage of the units or the number of bedrooms or anything?
No, it didn't. I'll show you. There was one unit where we had to make an adjustment to the floor plan, but it was fairly minor.
Okay.
I'll just go through this relatively quickly. So we updated the illustrative plan, at least to reflect the drive and things at the front. The other thing this does now is it labels each of the unit types that are throughout the project. What you'll find is most of the ones that are oriented basically east-west that have the long south-facing roof, those are the cottage A type generally. We have two of the cottage B type, which are these that are oriented more north-south. And then we have the pair of duplex buildings at the top of the site here. This was the parking, how it worked out, which Danny had covered as well, the rendering that we've been referring to already. So in terms of the different unit types, this is the cottage A type. And so you are seeing the typical front elevation. What you can see here is on the south-facing elevation. This previously was a side gable dormer. You can actually kind of still see it in the line work that we didn't update in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
We were originally thinking of this as more of a gable, and instead we're just going to do this as a shed roof. And so you'll have the sloped roof area both in front and behind that dormer, as well as the dormer itself. So again, there was no needed modification to the plans themselves to accommodate that. We've also included what the basement plans would look like. This cottage is used in a couple of different configurations. It is the type that gets the tuck under garages that at unit 1 and unit 8 up on the top side of the drive. So one of those, the garage comes in the back, and the other one, the garage comes in the side. It's a square, so it operates either way. And in the ones in the lower court, we have a full basement that could be potentially finished. So again, the floor plans themselves didn't change. It was just a minor modification to the way the roof worked over the dormer. Cottage B is the one we had to modify a little bit more significantly. The real difference was just upstairs. This bedroom 2 previously was oriented much like the attic space, sort of more front back so that it sat in the gable side to side. So really all we did was reoriented this so it could be that side turning gable, so that this whole long face here is what is now the south facing exposure. So we get some good solar exposure there. This was the only one that had any real sort of modification to the plan. These are the flats. So again, the units are largely the same. We did a little bit of a rearrangement to incorporate a second door, but the real change is really just on the back here. Previously, we had this roof coming through, so there was a gable sort of facing to the back. And what we've done is we've reoriented the way that roof works on that level, so that we could get, again, a south-facing slope here. Again, this is that rear elevation. So this used to have actually a paired sort of gables here. And instead, now we have this nice big southern facing roof area to be able to capture a lot of solar access. So again, the plans themselves, only minor changes in a couple of them, largely an exercise in the roofs, which was a good suggestion and worth figuring out at this stage. And then for what it's worth, we've not really discussed much the car barns. Again, these are a series of individual garages. There's one set that's just a pair of paired bays, which is this building. The other one was a series of 6, which would look like this. The back, this is the north facing elevation. So the back side is the south face. That whole roof could actually be available for solar as well. We haven't even shown it that way, but I think we consider different things like those car chargers. It'd be great to somehow tie that solar into that system. So something for us to explore a little bit further. And then this is the small community structure. It really is meant to be just a little flexible space, much like we have at Riverwalk. The one at Riverwalk is more of a screened-in porch, so it's really useful for 3 seasons of the year. We're considering potentially conditioning this one and enclosing it so that it offers a different amenity in that sense. But this is really thought of as just being a room that the residents can either use to host a party or have an HOA meeting or, you know, have a yoga studio or something in there. But again, it's a relatively small, just neat little structure with the porch facing up to the green itself. So again, that was just a quick overview, but probably as much as you guys.
Yeah, and so these facilities, the common facilities, will they be, I guess it's up to the residents whether they decide that each community just uses theirs independently or that they consolidate access, you know, because it does seem like they do provide different kinds of amenities, and that the opportunity to just kind of share across would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think
I guess
like you
that's
said,
up to them.
it'll be up to them. But that was, we conscientiously like, for instance, including that turf area versus in Riverwalk, there's a community garden. So we
Yeah,
were kind of being mindful
exactly.
about, you know, it'd be great if they could all kind of share, but we obviously can't force that hand.
Well, I
but
keep coming
that's
back
the way
to
we hope it'll go.
Riverwalk too. I just keep coming back to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's it for the architecture.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's all we have to present. Happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
I think that, at least for me, this is a right moment to transition to our guidance to Elizabeth about writing up our recommendation letter. We have the planner's report that kind of gives us an outline of the different criteria, and I just thought that I would quickly go through each of those and maybe have discussion among the board members to just see what our views are. Oh, I'm sorry that I'm becoming a ghost here. I really do exist. I am not an avatar. There we go. So is that all right for everybody? Ready to try that out? Okay. So if you, I think we could share out the planner's report. Elizabeth, do you want to share that, or I've got it? I could share it either way.
Share it.
There, I beat you to the punch.
Oh, all right.
So it starts off with the purpose, and you know, here, you know, I don't want to read word for word what's going on, but it's basically about, is this harmonious with the neighborhood? You know, does it have the right kind of design of housing? Is it, you know, suitable for the neighborhood and the density and the type of land development and conservation of open space? So I'd entertain any remarks about that from the group about, does this meet the purpose of a PRD? Please unmute yourself if you are.
I think that it does meet the purposes. I do think there's a question about the open space upland calculation, but I think overall it does meet the purpose, with all considered.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's very consistent with the long range plan also, in terms of the low impact that it has and the smaller units. And I know we're going to get to that, but overall, I think that it definitely fits with the purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I say the same thing, that directionally, I think it's what we would like to see in terms of the overall goal that they have. Yeah, it's definitely harmonious with the neighborhood, considering it is very similar to what is next door.
Yeah.
In a broader sense, the style of the homes and everything like that is in keeping with the broader neighborhood. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd say that it even anticipates the kinds of changes that we are proposing for town meeting for the PRD bylaw. So I'd give it a thumbs up on that front. Okay, and then the others are kind of more just numeric. So minimum tract size, permissible density. I don't think that we have any, thing to add here. What would be basic density, and what we're seeing is that the additional units are affordable units, so as provided for in our bylaw, so that seems to work. The diversity of dwelling units, I think it's not a controversial question in this case. We saw that fewer than 60% of the units are of one type, and they're different sizes and clearly would address different price points.
I think that's an important point. I mean, I think we're not seeing enough of, these different price points and smaller units, and to attract, different families and people. So I think that's a really important aspect of the development.
Right, we're not seeing that enough in other developments, but this one definitely is in the right direction. Yeah. Then 10231, the low income dwelling units. So clearly we've got one that's going to go on the Concord housing, on the state housing inventory. And then we've got, here's the unit size and just the rundown of that and the types very clearly. Also just some of the unit configurations, number of bedrooms that really the town is short on. And then exterior design. So I think that we saw the exterior views of the units. I didn't see any distinction. And then the affordable units, these will be in perpetuity. So that's okay. And then they're all of the types of dwellings that we allow in a PRD. So that's 10241. Then the 20-foot setback. Now that was interesting that green area, the common open space, was like 12 feet, but how, I didn't know. Well, let's see. I was just thinking about what the setbacks are on this, from the units to the lot lines.
The closest point is 21 feet.
21 feet, okay. Then the access, I think that there's already an agreement with Riverwalk for providing the access. And then the height. So you said that you adjusted the heights and that they're now compliant. I mean, and I didn't know if you had any further comments about that in terms of the measurement. What do we have now as a height?
Yeah, we don't exceed the 35 feet. The tallest structure is right about at that point. But
Okay.
we included a spreadsheet that does a calculation for every unit. So it was that one unit in that one location, and we had dimensioned it incorrectly. And so we fixed all that. So we won't be exceeding the 35-foot height limit.
Okay. Then the area of residential development, just a straight calc. And then this, we've already discussed both the size and then the configuration of the common open space. And I think that was the one area that we had some comments from the board in terms of what to do about this. So, and the types of uses that are allowed there. And so I think since we've already discussed that, I didn't know if there were any further comments, but I think that we've captured what the feedback has been so far from the board. Then the access to the common open space, it will be open. Well, first of all, that there's going to be an easement that's going to be open to the public. And then you're going to keep the easement owned by the condominium association. You're not going to dedicate it to the town or anything. And that's going to be enshrined in the condominium documents. Then there's a perpetual restriction, so that's good. We're not going to subdivide this anymore. That would be pretty tight, even if you did try. That would be, and then, so that is the criteria that, you know, we have, and then this is the kind of the site evaluation of based upon the rules and regs that we have for subdivisions. So, you know, groundwater, and we've gone through each of these. These were really the source of the feedback from town departments, and then also the letter that we got back. And so I think that we have thoroughly discussed each of these points, unless somebody has something, you know, that they want to add. Oh, traffic. We did not discuss traffic, but I don't think that we have had a lot of concerns about traffic, at least aired in this this round of review on this PRD. Any comments about traffic or the, you know, the model that was used in the proposal here? Okay, really quiet.
I did not have any questions.
Okay. Then development area. Then yes, so we also have not really talked about the financial impacts. You know, so what are the both direct and indirect impacts, financial impacts and otherwise, that are expected from the project? I didn't know if maybe Dan wanted to take that and maybe give us some color on this. Mr. Gainsborough, are you available?
Sorry, yes, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. I don't, Rob actually took the lead on this.
Okay, I saw him earlier in this conference. Maybe he is available.
I don't know if if he's not available, then I will attempt to walk you through this, but it's based, I can tell you this, that it's based on the same logic and the same calculations that we used for Riverwalk, just adjusted the numbers accordingly. So that's where it was, that's the origins of it. I don't know how helpful that is, but I mean, what we see
as a, yeah, so interesting question for me is, you know, given how comparable this is to the Riverwalk, how many school-age children are at the Riverwalk?
So my recollection, and a lot of them have, it's now 10 years later.
Sure.
But when we started, there were, let me think about this. I don't want to misspeak, but I want to say there were probably 3 or 4 families, maybe 4 families that had school-age kids. So that would be a little less than a third of the units. And so far, in terms of the folks that have expressed interest in the project, I would say that percentage is even down now. It's probably close, it's probably less than a quarter. And I actually hope that we get a few more families, because I think it makes for a more age diverse community. And I think the people that live there tend to like that.
Yeah, okay.
So I will, my recollection is, I'm just counting in my head, I believe it was 4 families that had school-age kids.
So we're talking like 5 to 8 kids or something on total.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Enough to have a pickup game of something down in a relatively small open space area down by the community gardens.
Yeah, I think other than the tax impacts, I mean, the public services impacts are, you know, pretty normal, and just that would be the only other significant financial impact. So I think that we've kind of got a net on this. Okay.
And my understanding was it's a net positive.
Okay. All right. Site distance of intersections. So that is an area where people do tend to exceed the speed limit. There is one of those signs prompting people about their speed, but it's usually when they're headed down towards the mill that
Yeah.
things really get fast. Okay.
I can just comment on that, Matt. That's a reason why we are very eager to try to convince the appropriate parties to introduce the parking along the street, because that, as you know, is an absolutely a very effective traffic calming measure.
Okay. Gives a psychological indication of it's a residential street. Yeah.
Yep, and people don't know, none of us know if somebody's going to pull out, so we tend to slow down. It's the same thing that happens in Concord Center
Okay.
and West Concord.
So cultural resources. Now, I think this does prompt another issue, which is you are taking down these buildings, that had been preferably preserved, at least indicated that by the Historical Commission. You had mentioned something about using elements of those buildings in the design. Is that just simply kind of echoing some of the architectural principles, or are there literally materials that are being used, or what's going on there?
All right, so I'm gonna, Jeremy's, I can tell he wants to jump in on this, but let me do the simple one. The simple explanation is we're dismantling the buildings, we're not demolishing them. And so there are several wonderful components inside, mostly in terms of the structure and some of the flooring. And so we have not designed it yet, but my guess is that Jeremy, knowing him as I do, he's going to come up with wonderful ways to employ those materials. And the other thing I want to say, and then I'm sorry, Jeremy, we'll let you speak, is that on Thursday night, we're going to be meeting with Shelby, and Meg and I are going to be meeting with the historic district folks, and we're going to review with them how we're going to ask them if they would consider allowing us to document them photographically and plans, and just try to preserve the important elements of them. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's usually during demolition delay, that's one of the formal reasons for the delay typically. So I assume that they would be in favor of that. Yeah.
Yes, I hope so. I think they were eager to talk about it, and then they came online in terms of Zoom access after you guys did. So this is the first opportunity to speak with them.
Okay.
So Jeremy, do you want to say anything about it? Is it possible they show up in the community building, or I know you haven't given it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think we have hope that there's much in the smaller home that would provide a lot of reuse opportunity, but certainly in the barn, there's a lot of wood, the beams, the flooring, things like that, that once it's deconstructed and we have a good sense of the inventory of what's available, certainly that community amenity building is a good candidate for being completely designed around those kinds of materials. And I think some of the other site amenities, like even the mail pavilion, we have to design some little structure for that. Maybe the bridge that crosses over the bioretention area. I think there'll be, and the stones too, even the stone foundation we can reincorporate into the landscape areas. So I think once we know what we have to work with, we'll certainly maximize the amount of that we can repurpose and reuse on site.
Okay, but it won't be visually evident. I mean, to the people, passers-by, they're not going to see like in Riverwalk, right? There was that structure. It was significantly changed, unfortunately. I mean, had to be, I guess, but it's still there. Okay. Then the development of any open space that's within the, proposed is identified within the open place. Yeah, this is fine. It's not going to be within 100 feet of what we already have. Then you've done the development plans. So now we just get to 10.4.2. So basically, the first is just the facts of the terrain. So that's been well documented here by Elizabeth. Then we just need to say whether this development, provides the right combination of supports pedestrian and vehicular circulation, and has the right amount of parking and the right grading, landscaping, and screening. So any comments on that from folks? Y'all are real quiet tonight. All right, well, I personally think that it has the right combination of pedestrian and vehicular circulation, and that it also has the right amount of parking, even without the 4 spaces up on Main Street for this type of community. And that, you know, it's clearly been graded and landscaped and screened to it fairly well. So I think that that's all right. It's very tight, but very tightly designed. Then the degree to which it provides a diversity in size of units, and also the right amount of density. And so we need to agree to that. I believe that in the previous sections we have mentioned that all of those things satisfy us, maybe more than satisfy us in this case.
Yes.
And then the degree to which any land that's going to be conveyed for, you know, to the town or restricted for the benefit of the town, you know, provides any addition to areas of open space. I think that one of the things here is that, yes, I think that first of all, it connects to existing open space that's been set aside by Riverwalk. And then we did talk about the possibility, though not necessarily that we can count on, of additional open spaces being opened up back there along the river. We makes land available for future public use. I think that the public use is, of course, quite you know, restricted. It's going to be whatever is going to be available right now, which is as trails. You know, it's not buildable land. And then finally, does it conform to the town's long-range land use plan? And I would say that to the extent that, you know, it helps protect the corridor of a, you know, a wild and scenic river, that clearly seems to work. So those are all very good things. And then our opinion, whether the site design, development layout, number, type, and design of housing constitute a suitable development for the neighborhood in which it's located. We've all said thumbs up on that, because it's very similar concept to the one next door and similar density to the one on the other side. And then whether we recommend that they grant this. So I think, would you like to, anybody like to suggest to Elizabeth what we would recommend about this project? Yes, ma'am, Ms. McNamee.
Just to comment on the open space, I do think it's important that we get to a point where we have the upland open space that we think is required. So I guess I'm just wondering, do we know what the split is?
Yeah, it's not so much a question of the percentage, because you know, the grand total of open space is large because of this you know, significant amount of wetland. What the problem is just simply the number of square feet of upland open space.
Right. So how many feet of
right
the
here.
upland open space is
So
in the
they've got,
contiguous area versus the stormwater retention area along the
yeah,
plan?
right. And I think that it's probably a, what, 800 square feet, 1,000, somewhere in there. That's a rough guess, but.
Okay, that's not bad.
Do you have a sense, gentlemen?
Danny,
On the west side, that strip, how big is that strip?
is Danny still on?
Yeah.
Let me just give you a quick guesstimate on that. So
Okay,
that
so while Danny's doing that, I have a thought about including that as conservation area. I'm just thinking if it was standard stormwater features, might not be that impressive as a conservation area, but if it had these bioretention features and was planted with enough attractive species that were beneficial to plants and animals living in the area, then that could be something that could be called, or we could consider whether that's actually lends itself to being conservation.
So that western leg of the open space is about 3,500 square feet.
3,500, okay.
I certainly wanted to comment just quickly on this. I'm probably the least qualified person to do so, but when thinking about that, I guess I would just ultimately say if you were to step back and just think holistically about whether or not we're meeting the intent of what's trying to be achieved with that. I know certainly when you look at the very specific geometries of it, there's, you know, some questions being raised here, but I think we're trying to balance not only that required common open space, but obviously quite a bit of other open space that isn't included in that area. And, you know, if we were to have to displace that area into some of those other areas, we might lose things like some of like the community amenity building, for instance. That's exactly where you'd start expanding that. So I think as we're trying to strike a balance, I guess we're just asking you guys to also consider it in terms of the overall project and whether or not we're meeting sort of the general intention and whether or not the way that we've designed it, you know, you squint your eyes and you'd be hard pressed to say this project has an open space problem. And so I think it's just worth suggesting. I know you guys still have to be able to sort of defend it and make the case, but it's just a tricky thing and certainly something we were trying very carefully to balance in a reasonable way.
Are the plantings proposed there, or are there bioretention features proposed there that would lend itself to that area being considered conservation instead of just a utility for stormwater?
So the sediment forebay in that area has grass within it, but it is surrounded by plantings. And I don't know if Jared wants to speak about the plantings in that area.
But yeah, just going to say, so I mean, that area, we're certainly going to be utilizing it to add a lot of tree diversity back into the property that we're removing from the interior. But yeah, certainly the underplantings would all be designed to be native, naturalistic style that would sort of foster the habitat that's already in the area.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be lawn, for example.
Okay. So from my perspective, this sounds okay.
So Kate, just so I can clarify under that open space section, although that, you know, is a strip of land, it's more of a bioretention swale that's, you know, has native plantings that, you know, provide an additional connection and corridor for wildlife.
That sounds good to me. Are we using the word bioretention correctly? Maybe that's a question for Danny Carr, but.
So technically it's not a bioretention area, it is a sediment forebay, but it has similar qualities to it.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, but I like the language that you propose. Maybe we don't call it bioretention, but we say that it'll be planted in such a way as to enhance Jared.
Enhance the sort of the habitat for pollinators. I mean, right now.
Thank you. There you go.
Right now, it's more sort of, I guess I'm envisioning it more to look like the current edge of Riverwalk and Waterside than what it is now. So I think it will definitely be an enhanced planting feature, similar to sort of the Riverwalk property along the, I guess, eastern fence of Riverwalk.
So that's all I had to say about that. Otherwise, I think I just want to echo what Matt said about it really showing, demonstrating all the really great qualities that we wanted to see in terms of having things be more densely developed, smaller units. So I think with that issue aside, I would say we should recommend that Elizabeth go ahead and write the letter, the ZBA.
Okay.
By the way, sorry, I had a technical problem in my room. I think a fuse blew or something. And so
Oh my gosh.
I lost my connection. So I'm back on my phone. So I'm present. Just wanted to say.
I think, did you hear the recommendation about
Yes,
what
I did.
Elizabeth can put in? Okay.
Yes, I did. And I concur.
I concur.
Okay. So at this point, I believe by comments and that there's a consensus that the board is in support of the project and will be putting together a recommendation to grant the special permit. I can convey that to the Board of Appeals Thursday night, but that the planning board will be reviewing your written decision at your next meeting, which is, I believe, the 23rd.
Yes, it's the 23rd.
And provide your written recommendation to the Board of Appeals for their July meeting. Correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for the presentation.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Look forward to this. It's going to be an exciting project.
Yeah.
Great. Matt, your laptop is still showing on shared screen. So I don't know if I can kick you out. I'll kick out your laptop, I guess.
You might be able to do that. He'll still hear you. He'll still hear us on the phone.
So Matt, you're still on the phone?
He was.
Oh, Matt, okay, wait, no, I gotta admit Matt's phone again.
Okay, I'm back one more time, and this time, hopefully, I can start my video so that I'm actually visibly present.
Okay, so
Are you able to see me or no?
yes, we are able to see you, but I need you to disconnect your laptop because you're still under shared screen.
Oh, shoot. Okay, just a second.
Hey, Matt, you look like you're on Ghost Hunters
I'll try
when you carry around your phone like that.
And then I'm gonna bring back Burton. Okay. Oh, he's back. Okay. So now you need to hang up your phone, Matt.
I thought I did. Or you can disconnect me.
Okay. Okay. I'll just remove you.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
So do you want to start with the topic of the election of officers or go to our town meeting warrant articles? Let's go to the election of officers. So you know that they have extended the tenure of members beyond the typical, end of their time on our boards and committees in town to town meeting. So, technically, I'll remain on the board until whenever town meeting happens, which currently is expected to be in September. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that I should continue on as board chair through that whole time. And that normally, at the fiscal year, we would be switching officers on the board. So I've suggested that we actually look at that, and so that people get their full terms for FY21. And so I'd like to entertain any nominations for officers for this next fiscal year. Yes, Ms. McEnany.
I would nominate Kristen Ferguson for to step up as chair if she were willing.
Alan, would you like to comment?
I'll
You're on
second.
mute. Okay. Any others with any other proposals or comments?
Express my support for that proposal.
Okay. Then I think that I would take a motion for that. Well, I think Ms. McEnany's effectively made that motion, and we have had a second. So if there's not further discussion, then take a vote. It's a roll call vote. I'll start with Mr. Saying,
Yes.
Mr. Bosdet,
Yes.
Ms. McEnany,
Yes.
Ms. Overdahl,
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson.
Yes.
You can vote for yourself.
I'll do it.
And Mr. Flint. Okay, great. Well, we have a new chair. I don't know if we want to make that effective in the next meeting, or I might as well. I'd be just fine with it. So we'll go from there. Or it could be July 1st. It's up to you, new chair.
Okay,
Wait.
we will figure that out.
Okay. And then we need to elect a vice chair. So I'd take any kind of motion for that.
I would nominate Mr. Flint.
Second.
All right. Any other nominees? Any discussion?
Just one question. I know we have
Yeah.
sort of a practice of going, in your fourth year chair, and so I just want to make sure we're going in the right order.
Well, it's not quite like that because it just doesn't work out that neatly. I think both you and Ms. Ferguson have your tenure lasts about the same amount of time.
Right. In other words,
all off in 2 years. So
you still have time to be chair.
that's
Okay.
right. So yeah, we could draw straws or something, but but we did it this way. So
That's good.
okay. All right. So I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Saya,
Yes.
Mr. Bosdet,
Yes.
Ms. McEnany,
Yes.
Ms. Overdahl.
Yes.
Yes, I take that as a yes. Ms. Ferguson
Yes.
and Mr. Flynn.
Yes, thanks.
And then,
This is starting at the next meeting, correct?
We can start at the next meeting. That's fine.
okay. All right. And then for clerk, we need a nomination for clerk. Okay, Mr. Saya, tell us.
Nathan.
Mr. Bosdet is nominated. Any other nominees? Ms. McEnany?
I second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion of that or alternative nominees? All right, then. Mr. Saya, what do you say?
Yes.
Mr. Bosdet?
Yes.
All right, Ms. McEnany?
Yes.
Ms. Overdahl?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
And Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great. I'm glad that we're moving along. which then takes me to the next item, which is our warrant articles for town meeting. So at the last select board meeting, we were given a directive to look at our warrant articles that we're bringing to town meeting and to determine which of them we would consider to be essential articles, because the format of town meeting is likely to be highly constrained, and they're hoping to minimize the amount of time spent, in town meeting. If, for example, people have to be socially distanced or who knows what. The arrangements are still being discussed. And so, that puts kind of a question to us. And I wanted to also mention that their hope was that there would be a special town meeting or something that would follow as soon as practical the regular town meeting that we must have as soon as we can technically achieve it to pass the town budget, things like that. So, they're asking, are there things that we could defer? Now, they're kind of, besides of course, technically, there's very little that the planning board does that is essential for the running of the business of the town. Our job is to come up with new things. So that's one problem. The other problem is that, at least for me personally, having been engaged with some of the things that we are bringing to town meeting this year, the idea that, post town meeting, I'll be off the board and not able to kind of advocate for these articles, any of them, that's a bitter pill to swallow. But, that we're kind of, a lot of people are swallowing much more bitter pills than that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Considering that it is sort of extraordinary circumstances, should any of these things, we're going to delay some of them. And if they are ones that you were going to present initially as planned, is there any way that after your tenure is over, you can return to present that at the time, because you had sort of shepherded it into existence, and during your tenure, and because of COVID, it's just it's just the circumstance. It's not. Is there a way to work around it?
Well, I don't know if there is, but I have to say, other than just whining about it, I'm it's okay. I think you guys can advocate for these things. It's on, all the stuff's on the warrant.
But if we have certain articles at the town meeting, then you would get to present, right?
But yes, because it's really at the end of town meeting that the changing of the guard happens. Or
it seems like the housing choice initiatives that we're doing are the important ones. But I don't know what's the cutoff. Are they only trying to do budgetary things?
Right. So that's the other thing, is they did not provide any rubric for us to evaluate these things. So I actually think that perhaps what we should do is we should come back and kind of categorize them with our own kind of levels of, this is essential, this is important, this is housekeeping, this is something like that. I think that that way, then they can kind of see, well, okay, how far down are they going to draw the line here? Because one of the things that I gave as some feedback was, I said, under the circumstances, perhaps we could do more kind of online public hearing type of content, where we do the formal presentations of the articles and have some real debate online. And then at the town meeting, we would simply read, the motion as printed in the warrant in our cases. And then, yes, there would be an opportunity if someone really wanted to raise some debate, but realizing the situation, and that there'd already been another opportunity for debate online, that perhaps they wouldn't. And then that we would be able to expedite the consideration by by the town meeting of our articles. So that has been, I sent that to our chair of the board of select, the select board, and he has then relayed that to the town moderator. I haven't heard back. I mean, you know.
I mean, is that in discussion right now, that there will be some sort of online discussion forum for all
everything
of
is under discussion.
Okay. I just meant like feasibly, is that something that
I mean, Carmen Reese has talked about people holding, you know, town meeting in football stadiums, and you know, there's lots of different models that people have used. So yeah, it's
okay.
an unknown. We're still in a kind of unknown. So I guess what really it comes down to for us right now is just saying, okay, how will we categorize you know, the articles that we had brought. And so I guess, you know, what I would look at here is it's just, you know, articles 32 through 39.
And what's the deadline for us responding?
Well, I think that they're hoping that we would do it at this meeting.
Okay.
I think it's, you know, but I didn't get an explicit deadline. And some of the boards and committees only meet once a month, you know, so we perhaps could take this home as a homework, come back and discuss the next time and tell people.
So Matt, I'll the board can either decide tonight, or we can, you know, continue this to the next meeting as people discuss this. I'll run through as your town planner my thoughts. You start with Article 32 which is the additional dwelling unit. I think that is a housing choice initiative that got very strong feedback during the whole comprehensive plan development, got very strong feedback as an element in our housing production plan, and got very strong positive feedback during the whole initiation and process that the board went through in developing that proposed warrant article. And I think there is a lot of pent up demand and I want to say excitement about that opportunity. And I do think waiting, you know, another year for that would not be advantageous for the community and people in it. Article 33, which is the two-family dwelling, I'm less inclined to think, given that it's only the resident C zone district right now, I'm less inclined that it has that type of overall impact that the additional dwelling unit has. So, you know, that could be postponed. The next article is Article 34, which is the PRD. It's a very complicated bylaw amendment, which that nature alone, even in a regular town meeting, makes it difficult to process through the town meeting. So I think if the town, you know, if the moderator feels that something of this complexity, whatever format she chooses, becomes an issue, I see that being the problem with the PRD bylaw, is just its complexity in trying to convey that to town meeting in whatever format she decides. The next one is the Hammerhead lot. It's not it's not a critical bylaw. It's straightforward. It's simple. If the moderator decides that things of this simplicity can still move forward through on the consent agenda, then I think that's fine. The relief from parking requirements, that's Article 36. Again, out of all of these, that's the least critical, because all of those criteria, it's going to happen anyways in a slightly less formal fashion. That's what the planning board has been doing for years. So if,
right,
you know, if you're looking to, you know, if the town moderator wants to try to reduce things, that's simple enough. I don't think it's housekeeping, so it could go on the consent agenda. So I would say Article 36 is probably one that could be postponed. Article 37 is the Thoreau Depot Business District map amendment. I think there is strong support from a public safety standpoint for the end product of what that map amendment does as far as the Starbucks site. And I do think that it is important and that should remain on whatever town meeting warrant there is. Article 38 is the philanthropic uses, fairs, bazaars. And Article 39 is the
Trailers.
prohibited uses and trailers. Again, same as hammered headlots. They're straightforward, they're simple. If there is a consent agenda, I feel they can go on that, but that there's no critical need that those can't be postponed. So that's my 2 cents on the articles.
Okay.
I thought that was a great, very helpful summary. It was unfortunate we don't know what the consent agenda is, because it would be lovely to go back and say, based upon the consent agenda, that leaves out these 4. We would move forward with these 2. But I think I agreed with each of your recommendations, in particular the accessory dwelling unit and the Thoreau Depot plan adjustment, or boundary adjustment, excuse me. That those should stay on the calendar.
I agree with what Burton said, and thanks for making those recommendations, Elizabeth.
So if I could kind of summarize those, then we really have 2 that we say proceed. We have 4 that are lower priority, but that potentially could be on the consent calendar and therefore could be processed, you know, just depending upon the moderator's discretion. And if they're not to be on the consent calendar, then we would just defer them. And then that leaves really just the 2 family that we would defer, and I agree with that. And then that really just leaves the PRD bylaw updates, which are complex, I agree. And I think that the big risk is around just the amount of debate that they could trigger. However, I also am concerned because I think that we all have felt at the end of this that we have some pretty strong desire to modernize the PRD criteria. And so I really, I don't know, I would like to put that on a, you know, on the bubble somehow, even though I realize it may not be practical from depending on the format of the event. So should I go forward with that we say we want to proceed with 2 for sure, 32 and 37, or we want to defer 33 for sure, and then 35, 36, 38, and 39, it's the discretion of the moderator depending upon whether it's on the consent calendar, and then 34 will, I think, be clear about what the issues are, but then say, you know, if anything could be put into the extra could be put in, that's the one, I think.
Yeah, I think it's worth kind of a brief explanation of why that one is important. I mean, she can probably see the complications that could arise, but you know, why we think that's still an important one to go through as quickly or as soon as we can bring it to everyone.
Okay. How about this then? Again, I don't know what the time frame is that they're looking for feedback. I didn't get a specific deadline, but it seems like to me that, oh yes, what were you going to say, Ms. McEnany?
I was just wondering if you guys thought there was any risk to, if we introduce it now and we're just not as able to defend it, and it's voted down, does that kind of hurt our chances of passing it next year versus, I mean, do you think there's any risk to actually doing it right now?
This is the PRD bylaw?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the PRD bylaw.
I think it's almost the opposite, that it's fresh in our minds now. And if we go another year, it's going to be like, what was that? Well, we were going to do some stuff. I mean, and on the other hand, it is true that you could further refine it. But it also means that in the meantime, other PRDs that come in, they may or may not reflect our principles, right?
So Kate's question is, if we did get it in town meeting and it was discussed but then voted down, you know, is it likely that the planning board would try to make some changes to it and then bring it again to the next town meeting? You know,
And it's certainly possible that the planning board can do that, you know, and has done that in the past on occasion.
Yeah, I guess my question is, my thought is just wondering if, due to the circumstances, people might have less of an appetite to consider, you know, taking on and approving something that is as complex versus, say, next year.
Yeah, I think that the complexity, I mean, it's just all these little things that we're changing. You know, it's none of them is earth shattering in and of itself. They're all tuning, I guess, but there's a bunch of them. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is we could scope it down and say, you know, we're only going to move 2-3 elements of what it is right now, an 8 or 9 element plan of stuff. You know, is there one key thing, the you know, percentage of open space? If we just say, okay, we want the percentage of open space to be, you know, 35 instead of 25, and that's it. Well,
or the sustainability aspects.
Yep.
Yeah, I think maybe let's do it if we're going to do it. Let's go whole hog.
I mean, I think the only thing I remember being at all just controversial was like the ZBA versus planning board.
As the permitting authority. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. And we could just drop that for now.
Yeah.
What do you think, Elizabeth?
I think I'd have to look at the bylaw amendment and see how that would play out as far as introducing a revised warrant article as a motion on the town meeting. I'd have to look at it in more detail and see how the structure would change.
Well, how about this as an action plan? Why don't I compose a memo that talks about everything but this one? Okay. In the meantime, you'll take a look at the PRD, and then we come back at our next meeting and we'll review that and decide what we'll send in as our final. Seem okay?
Seems okay. I'm kind of with Kate, and I worry about us reopening back up that PRD just in terms of the process. You know, this is I feel like we're limited in our ability to you know, do stuff in these Zoom meetings. So I worry about opening that back up and making changes. So I think I'm leaning towards you know, Kate's point about just go with it or don't.
So Matt, just looking at this, because I have the warrant in front of me, it actually would only require to just remove that element of it going from the Board of Appeals to the Planning Board.
Okay.
I would have that one language, you know, just to delete that one amendment throughout the warrant article, and then it's just it would be delete the proposed amendments under one particular section 10.4.2. So it wouldn't To remove the
It
planning
wouldn't.
board, it wouldn't be too difficult.
Right, you wouldn't have to send a handout of 10 pages to people, in
No.
every address in town. Yeah, okay, or whatever we're gonna do. Yeah, okay. I kind of like that compromise personally. I just think that when we look at the kinds of things we want to get done with this, while certainly streamlining the process, being the permitting authority ourselves is a great thing, and we should keep looking at that. Given the feedback that we got, and just that it is likely to create additional debate, it may be the fastest path forward for most of our other objectives.
If it's simple and straightforward in terms of removing, I mean, a lot of the other changes were why we had to restate the whole section, right? If it's simple to strike one part of the warrant article, okay.
It's literally section 10.4.4, and then striking one section of the explanation.
Okay.
I think this is a significant move. I mean, if we do think that if this is the right thing to do, then I think this was a good vehicle to do it.
No, and I think that, as Haley showed, planning boards are typically the permitting authority. I mean, I think we have lots of good reasons for doing this, but I'm just trying to think
I mean, we can try again on that one next year. Like, it's not as urgent, I don't think, in my mind anyways, relative to everything else we're trying to accomplish with that particular one.
I'm thinking of, in the set of changes that we're suggesting, it's kind of, I think, back to Sesame Street. Which of these is not like the other? The permitting authority, that's a real different thing from most of the other things. Site plan review is also a pretty significant difference, but
I hear what you're saying, but I think as a package, this is a good vehicle for introducing that change.
Yeah.
Well, but Kate, do you want nothing to happen if that's going to hold it back, or like what would
I want to do? I guess my feeling is that we keep it together
and leave it as it is.
I disagree.
I do feel like people did get hung up on, why would we change this process, and they kind of thought of it as a check and balances, and so I think it would take some significant explanation further on our part about, the process and why we think that we should be approving, the planning board should be the approving body. And I think we're not going to have that time and perhaps not even that audience. So I and then we're talking about amendments on the, to the article on the town floor and things like that, which just might get a little sticky.
And I think even the informal feedback I heard after the presentation was like, we really wish they had been separate from each other, so that like people wouldn't turn down the entire package because of this, unfortunate, in my impression, like misunderstanding about what we're trying to do with taking the authority over from ZBA. But like, definitely the informal feedback I heard was like, we wish they were separate, and you'd propose them separate so that, we could turn that one down if we really wanted to fight over it. But like, we want everything else.
Kate, is your concern that we that we won't, that we'll still have this do the candidates are still going to have to go through the process with both, or what? Like, what is your concern? Should these changes pass, but we're not the approving authority for like another year, let's say?
I wouldn't, it's my thought that this package as a whole is a good vehicle for that specific change. And, but
okay, I see.
I don't like.
So if we were to propose next year, so let's say these changes, and if we were to propose next year, okay, The only change we're making, recommendation, is that the planning board be the approval authority. You think that alone wouldn't be kind of a strong change that people would receive well on its own?
Yeah, I think it's good as a part of a suite of changes meant to update and strengthen the PRD. But that, again, that's just my opinion.
And Kristen, I wouldn't, as far as streamlining the process, the board reviewed, a well-done project tonight, and it's only been a few months. So, and I don't see that project getting bogged down at the Board of Appeals. So it really depends. I wouldn't worry too much about that one.
Okay, well, how about this? I will still write this draft letter, okay? And I'll write it with this idea that it seems like there's a majority that would be interested in this revision, potential offer of a revision of Article 34, and see, what we think as we get, time. People had a couple weeks to think about it, and then we can decide whether we want to send that letter in next time, okay? Which then now takes me to the next item, which, well, I'm going to, is the preliminary discussion of goals and projects for next year. And actually, this is a time when, this is actually what prompted me to think this is a time to elect new officers, because I'm not going to be here. So, whatever y'all want to work on. No, but actually, I do have some thoughts, but maybe I'd let others start.
Can I ask, can you just remind me, is there a process for, are we informally, are we brainstorming right now and then they get written down into something that's a list?
Yeah, so normally Elizabeth prepares a memo and she will be doing that, of goals for FY21. And if you look in our package, we had a memo from last year, and probably the very best way to start the process is look at what we said we were going to do last year versus what we actually got accomplished. And actually her memo will start next year with what we actually got done this year. Although that's a little harder to write this year than usual because we haven't had town meeting yet. Normally we're able to say, yeah, this one passed, that one passed, all that stuff. But this year we're going to say, well, we got it. We're hoping, and we're moving on to start talking about more stuff, because otherwise we're just going to be in neutral looking at that orange VW bug. You don't want to cruise in neutral very much longer.
So you do, so one project you will have, and it will be the Thoreau Depot redevelopment, which you'll be having the presentation at your next meeting from MAPC, and public, again, taking in public comment. And so, that has the potential to be, a pretty significant project.
Well, in fact, could that lead to a master plan effort?
That may lead to some, similar to what West Concord did.
Yeah.
And it could be, a Thoreau Depot Village master plan process.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that the board should discuss with MAPC as a next step for at your next meeting during the public forum. So, that's a pretty big project.
Also, did you see the CPTC has a master planning workshop coming? And I recommend, given this Thoreau Depot thing, that maybe take a look at that. Yeah.
So, and also just to give you an update, town staff was in the process of going through and beginning to look at updating the subdivision rules and regs before everything shut down. We have all been, incrementally doing some things, but that still is something that is going to be happening over the next, I'm going to say the next 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So that will be another project for the planning board. While it's not a lot of involvement on the board's part, but it will require the board's review, input, and a public hearing to amend. Another potential project is, it's now been a year and a half with the implementation of the tree preservation bylaw and working with our reviewing agent from Davey Tree. I think it was April. Yeah, I think it was April. I asked that they are put together a memo on potential updates for either the bylaw or the rules and regs on just what they have been experiencing, with the application process and out in the field. So that's another potential project.
And so I was just going to pull up the last year's memo just so that we can just quickly go through and just see, So here, housing diversity, I think we can say we covered off on that one, with how we started. Smart growth analysis for Thorough Depot, we handled that. Parking requirements, that's on the warrant. This is kind of the process we're going through here, now in part is, okay, as we set FY21 goals, let's make sure that we look at the action chart from the comprehensive long range plan and just see what open items they already had for us that we can continue to check off. And I wanted to mention one that I've been looking into and talking with people around town about, which is whether to create a neighborhood conservation districts bylaw. And so basically it's, a historic district light kind of thing for certain types of communities that would find the historic districts too constraining. And it would be a 2-year process. The first year would be passing the bylaw, which would be the framework in which people could create neighborhood conservation districts. And then subsequent to that, people would propose inform neighborhood conservation districts that would get voted in at town meeting. So it's the kind of thing, it's in the comprehensive long range plan, but if we want to do it, it's a kind of a long process and it takes a while to get started. So I've talked to folks in Nurse Neck Hill neighborhood about that. There's this Jenny Duggan Way, believe it or not, over in West Concord, where there's a bunch of deck houses, and people realize that deck houses are kind of now becoming a historical artifact. And then there's the whole Hubbard Street and Everett Street and all that neighborhood that right now is not in a historic district. So these are all candidates for that kind of thing. But there is a whole bunch of other stuff in the comprehensive long range plan, like low impact development, regulations. Do we want to mandate? Stormwater bylaw. Site plan rules and regs. Well, you were talking about subdivision, updating those, but site plan's another one, right, Elizabeth? And then Crosstown Connect. Wireless communications. I think that what we had decided was that the select board should really be taking the lead on this, because 5G typically is in the public way. And so we haven't done anything really here other than, a year or two ago, we dealt with that map issue or near Middlesex School. But any ideas here?
One thing that I was thinking that might be ripe to consider, because it seems to increasingly be coming up, in public comments we get, though it'll be a little bit contingent on what goes through town meeting this year, is what we can do for planning specifically around the town's climate goals, in conjunction with getting input from the light plant on their on what they're doing. And this could be things like considering requirements for EV charging, requirements for potentially using heat pump technology and things like that in lieu of fossil fuels. Some of the things that have come up, I think it's ripe to take a look at what we could do across that.
So, Burton, I think that's a community-based broad discussion. I don't see, your specific example, let's say, heat pumps or, EV charging stations, something from the planning board's perspective, like under zoning, and whether there's a larger discussion as far as like a general bylaw, similar to, when you adopt the stretch code. So
yeah, I mean, Article 40 is a general bylaw, right? That's being proposed, for example.
Yeah, and that's likely something that is, you're absolutely right, is probably more of a general bylaw. What I was thinking, things like requiring as part of PRDs, or other projects that require a review and approval, requiring the infrastructure for EV hookups, or whatever it may be, that is effective in achieving climate goals. Those always come up in our reviews, so I would have thought that they would be germane to the zoning code. If it's your view that it's not, perhaps that's the case, but I'd like to think about consolidating that discussion and taking a look at it. That would be my suggestion.
I also think there's a lot of expertise on the board right now in this area. So I guess it's back to trying to decide what the specific initiative is, but it does sound like an area to explore. Just to close off on this list, I think for West Concord design guidelines and the zoning district, I think that we had those discussions, and I think that what we determined was, that we weren't going to take action ourselves. That really looking to the West Concord Advisory Committee. And then subdivision rules and regs, I think, as Elizabeth said, we're doing that. And then I was curious, Elizabeth, any action from the state on zoning reform?
Not for 3 months. I haven't heard there's been any movement at all on that. Yeah,
it's been stuck for quite a while. I mean, I don't think it's dead yet, right? It's out. No, it's still out there.
No, I think it's just as with everything else, it was just waylaid by COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. Yes, Kate.
In terms of, is there anything we can do to look at continued mansionization in the town, or look at the impact of was there a significant amendment that was passed a couple of years ago to limit floor area ratio? We can look at the impact of that and think about whether we can do anything else.
I definitely think that the board could research, the impact of the floor area ratio in relationship to special permits that have been granted by the Board of Appeals to allow expansion greater than 50%, and how that relates to floor area ratio, and whether that has been an effective measure. But beyond that, the Board of Appeals has started developing, I'm going to say, metrics for evaluating those special permits that are for expansions greater than 50%. And so that, yeah, that is something that the board could research and see if changes are needed.
Okay.
I mean, in conjunction with that, are we able to get any aggregate data from CMLP about energy use? You think? I don't know that you know, but I mean, I didn't know if you've ever heard that we could have access to that.
I imagine you could probably get a significant amount of data from
Oh,
CMLP
yeah?
for whatever you need.
Okay.
They like
'Cause-
data. They like data over there.
I liked it too, because to me that's the big thing. Well, there's town character, but it's almost like that horse that left the barn. But to me, sustainability and energy usage is a big thing, and I'm glad that we're building new, hopefully tighter homes. But I find it hard to believe that with what we're seeing, we're not seeing a change in overall energy usage and water usage too, for that matter. But that's maybe its own separate thing.
So I think I don't think, as I said earlier, I don't think this is a planning board initiative. I think the planning board is a part of that conversation, because you have the sustainability director, you have staff at CMLP that deals with this, you have CSEC, you have, what's the other one? There's the Comprehensive Sustainable Energy Committee, and then I can't remember the other committee. Nobody else remembers the other committee? What's the other committee? CSEC and I don't know, it's gone.
Advisory board, if I can put my voice in.
I'm sorry, Janet Miller?
Action Advisory Board, I
Oh,
think is what you're looking for.
there you go. So, I mean,
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of, there's a lot going on in the town. So I think, but that the planning board, as part of your goals, can be a champion to spur that community-based discussion.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if maybe, again, we should take as some homework to go between now and next meeting, and specifically to look at the comprehensive long-range plan, look at the list of action items for the planning board and the planning department, planning division, I should say, and see if out of those there's something that you feel like, okay, we could take on next year. It may not be that next year is a kind of year like this year where we had sort of this theme, for what we were doing, but it also can be. I find that the board tends to cycle through different kinds of things. So, neighborhood character types of things, the kinds of regulatory issues, and as we did this last year, it's housing diversity or affordability types of issues, and there's a kind of a natural cycle. You don't want to keep on just one area. There's a lot of different issues that we can address, and then take into the context also what we know we already will have to do, which is on that Thoreau Depot, I think, work. What can happen around that. I think there's been quite a discussion in town about post-COVID. There's been a lot of stress on the businesses in our village centers. And so is there going to be a permanent change in the character of our village centers? And I think that actually the work on Thoreau Depot is a great path forward, because mixed use kind of builds in clientele for businesses. And so, because they're right there. But maybe there's some other things that we should be looking at, because there are some structural changes happening in the economy.
So Matt, I will email this out again. I already have the action item appendix from the comprehensive long-range plan that specifically identifies where it calls
Oh,
out
good.
the planning board or the planning division. So I'll email that out again.
Great. I think that we should, yeah, look at that. Okay. All right. Well, I think that closes out this discussion. Again, you know, we haven't even hit the new fiscal year, but I think it would be helpful to start the ground running, hit the ground running, as I say. Okay. So then I think that just brings us to minutes. And one of the things that we have is, it's pointed out to me, an error in our minutes from November 26th. It's a very minor error, but it's still an error, which is that we had the wrong people listed as attending our meeting. And in fact, it's interesting because the minutes are correct in even attributing statements to people. It's just the list at the beginning that's wrong. So I think that what we need is, and this, Elizabeth, as I was wondering, is, you know, what's the procedure? Do we just have a motion to correct the minutes and then state what the change should be?
Correct. And a
Okay.
roll call vote.
Yes. And so I think it was that the people who were absent were Mr. Buzdet and Ms. Overdahl, right? Who were listed as being present, but were in fact absent. And Mr. Flint was listed as being absent, but was in fact present. I just wanted, when we correct it, I want to make sure we correct it correctly. Okay. So I think I'll just make that motion. So I move that we correct the minutes of the November 26th meeting of the Planning Board to reflect that the attendees to the meeting did not include Mr. Buzdet and Ms. Overdahl, but did include Mr. Flint.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Well, roll call vote. Mr. Saya?
Yes.
Mr. Buzdet?
Yes.
Ms. McEnany?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Flint?
Yes.
Ms. Overdahl?
Yes.
Okay. Then that brings us to the minutes of the May 26th meeting, which happened very recently. So this is a quick turnaround on minutes. Any comments on the minutes people received in their packet? I did not see any issues with them. So again, could I take any motions?
What was the date on that again? May 26th, you said?
May 26th. We could defer these if you all, you know, didn't get a chance to read them.
Let's move with speed. I make a motion that we approve as drafted the minutes of May 26th.
Second.
All right. I will take a roll call vote. Mr. Say.
Yes.
Myself, yes, by the way, in the last vote, also myself, yes. Mr. Buzdet.
Yes.
Ms. McEnany.
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Flint.
Yes.
Ms. Overdahl.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're ready for a public comment. If anyone has a public comment, please make yourself known through the participants window. I believe there's a raise your hand button that you can click. Though I see we have a vanishing number of participants in the meeting. Seeing no input for public comment, I would say we can adjourn the meeting and I will conclude my chairmanship. So thanks everybody for bearing with me over the past year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. We're glad
Wait a
you're not
second. Wait, Matt, I thought it was effective the next meeting.
No, she's taken over.
This is his last as chair.
We've
The
had
last
a
meeting.
Yeah,
But you'll
peaceful
still be with
transfer of
us.
power.
Yeah.
Yes.
When do we do a speech to say how wonderful we think you are, Matt?
No, no need, no need. That's all right.
Well, I've learned a lot
Actually, you
under
know,
your chairmanship, so thank you.
yeah, I'm just gonna have to learn how to shut up. That's my main job. It's
yeah.
good practice, because when I'm the junior member of the select board, I'm gonna, if that happens, I'm gonna need to learn how to shut up.
No, Matt, I disagree. You just say what you have to say.
And public comment, everybody remember to vote.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
All right,
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. Bye.